Hey everyone! Today let us talk about a true blockbuster. In Los Angeles, where humans coexist with orcs, elves, and other magical creatures, the social hierarchy puts orcs at the bottom class, humans in the middle, and elves at the top. One day, Officer Daryl Ward waits for his orc partner, Nick Jacoby, to get food in a busy street when suddenly, an orc appears and shoots Ward. Sometime later, Ward recovers and awakens at home to his wife, Sherri, who asks Ward to get rid of a fairy on the birdfeeder. Sherri also watches an interview where an orc denounces Jakoby because he's not part of any blooded clan and has joined the police force. When Sherri disapproves of Jakoby, Ward notes that he doesn't like the orc as his partner either, but he's accepted it to avoid messing up since he's retiring in 5 years. Still, Sherri worries because Ward got shot because Jakoby didn't watch his back. Ward then goes outside and shoos the fairy off with a broom, but his neighbor and his friends goad Ward, leading him to whack the fairy to death. Back inside, Ward's daughter, Sophia, echoes Sherri's prejudice against orcs, especially Jakoby, but Ward explains that everyone is just different. Jakoby arrives to pick up Ward for his first day back at work, but Ward complains about him stopping by. Sophia runs outside and mentions that they're heading to her grandma's house, so Jakoby offers them a ride despite Ward's protests. After dropping off Sophia, Ward scolds Jakoby for not doing anything when he got shot. When Jakoby starts apologizing, Ward decides to let it go. Jakoby jokes around with Ward to get him in a better mood, but Ward only rides along, masking his annoyance. At the station, Ward is taunted by the others, mainly by Pollard, who hates Jakoby and orcs in general for siding with the Dark Lord during the war 2,000 years ago. Because the orc that shot Ward got away, Pollard thinks Jakoby let him go since the orcs clan law dictates that orcs have each other's backs. Ward doesn't defend Jakoby but also doesn't condone their prejudice. Ward is welcomed back into the force, and after receiving their assignments, he tries to get himself reassigned to a new partner, but the sergeant declines. As the two patrol the streets, Ward reminds Jakoby to prioritize his job as a cop before any orc clan laws. Witnessing other cops violently apprehend orc civilians in the streets, Jakoby assures Ward that his loyalty's in his badge. They then respond to a scene where a man named Sarling brandishes a sword at an intersection. Another officer, Rodriguez, is already there, and he and Ward share a casual conversation about their families. Sarling speaks about a Dark One returning to reclaim orc hearts, but Ward orders him to drop the sword, or they'll shoot. The man complies, and Jakoby takes him into custody. Inside the car, the man suddenly speaks Orcish to Jakoby about a message from the Shield of Light, a militant group preparing against the Dark Lord's return. Sarling tells him that Jakoby is chosen and that the man he's with is blessed. This surprises Jakoby, but he dismisses it as nonsense. Later, internal affairs agents approach Ward, wanting his help to get Jakoby fired. They point out that, according to Jakoby, he chased the orc who shot Ward, but the suspect jumped into a nearby fire escape. However, during the investigation, they found that the fire escape was 13 feet off the ground, making his statement impossible. Ward tries to defend his partner, but his superiors are convinced that orcs hold clan law above all else. Since Jakoby's employment in the police force is in the public eye, they can't fire him without cause. Instead, they want Ward to trick Jakoby into a confession and record it. When Ward declines, they threaten his job, so he reluctantly agrees. During their patrol, Ward spins a story about his daughter coming clean to a mistake, hoping it'd get Jakoby to confess. However, this just makes Jakoby suspicious instead. The conversation is cut when they get called into a case. Meanwhile, Magic Task Force agent Skandamir and his human partner, Monty Hugh, interrogate Sarling about the Shield of Light. They ask about the Inferni, who Sarling claims are renegade elves working to bring the Dark Lord back using 3 magic wands. Sarling identifies Layla, the Inferni Coven leader, as a Bright, someone who can wield a wand and use its magic. Brights are usually elves, but in rare instances, humans can be a Bright too. Montague then explains that Layla has a wand, and to get her, they must first find Tikka, another elf who Layla is pursuing. At the same time, Ward and Jakoby head to a house on Abrams Street, where they get immediately shot at. They return fire, and when the scene's clear, they enter the house and discover weapons and dead bodies, some freshly burned and are still glowing embers. At the center of it is a female elf fused to a wall that's pulsating magic, a clear indication of Bright activity. As Ward calls for backup, they spot Tikka escaping, so Jakoby tackles her. Before she gets handcuffed, however, Tikka blows up a car with magic. Ward threatens to shoot, so Tikka lets go of a glowing wand. Tikka then talks to them in Elvish, asking them to protect her and the wand. Ward doesn't speak Elvish, but luckily Jacoby understands that someone's coming for her. Later, Ward explains the incident to the other officers, but the others are just interested in exploiting the wand's magic. With gloves on, Pollard takes the wand and puts it in Jacoby's bag, plotting to get rid of Jacoby to cover up their theft. Ward refuses to participate, so they threaten to kill him too. Soon, Ward heads out and tries to get Jacoby to admit that he let his shooter go, hoping to have a reason to betray him. The two get into an argument, and when Ward pulls a gun on him, Jacoby admits to letting the suspect go. Inside, Pollard and the rest decide to kill both Jacoby, Ward, and the elf to remove all witnesses. Meanwhile, Jacoby explains that he let the orc go not because of clan politics. Instead, he lost the shooter in the crowd and ended up cornering a teenage orc. When he realized his mistake, he helped the teen evade the police, who wouldn't think twice about dropping him on the spot. Just then, the other officers come out, and Ward makes a decision. He swiftly turns and decisively shoots the others. Only Pollard survives and begs Ward to spare him. A confused Jacoby pulls a gun on Ward, but he's unable to shoot his partner. Instead, he radios the station to report the altercation, leaving out that Ward shot the officers. As Ward explains the situation to Jacoby, the Altamira gang, with their leader, Poison, approaches and shows interest in the wand. Ward tells them to leave, but Poison insists, so they retreat to the car, and the gang attacks. Jacoby shakes off gangsters climbing up around them, and when they drive away, a high-speed car chase ensues. The gang shoots at them and rams their car sideways. Ward returns fire but runs out of ammo, so he fires a taser at the driver, causing their pursuers to crash. They enjoy a brief moment of peace until Tika gets hysterical in the back seat, telling Jacoby to turn back. The wand then flies out of the bag and floats between the two cops, glowing brighter. Suddenly, they crash into an invisible force, rendering the car useless, so they leave it behind. At the Abrams house, Larica, the elf fused on the wall, is revived by Layla for information. After learning that Tika escaped with her wand, Layla slits Larica's throat. She also finishes off Pollard on her way out, and upon spotting the neighbors watching from across the street, they force the family into revealing that Tika left with an orc and a human. Elsewhere, Jacoby explains to Ward that wands have binding spells that keep them from getting far from their bright owners, hence the force that stopped their car. Jacoby suggests letting the feds deal with it, but Ward points out that he just killed their fellow officers who wanted to take advantage of the wand. Instead, they agree to find Rodriguez as he's the only one Ward trusts. Just then, Altamira gangsters find them, and Jacoby drops the wand in the chaos. A gangster quickly takes it, but when he does, he and the men with him are instantly pulverized. Witnessing its power, Jacoby carefully retrieves the wand before they escape. The three end up at a party of an orc group called the Fogteeth Gangsters, where they're met with disdainful glares. They walk through the crowd and get tangled up in a mosh pit until more Altamira gangsters arrive. Ward and Jacoby fight them off until they get back outside. Meanwhile, Candemir and his team finally arrive at the Abrams house. After observing Larica's corpse, Candemir explains to Montague that Larica was an infernee sent by Layla to kill Tika, but Tika escaped with the wand. Candemir has been tracking Layla for years, but now, she's vulnerable without her wand. Later, Ward and Jacoby discard their uniforms to blend in. Afterward, the two, together with Tika, walk into a nightclub but are cornered by Poison and the rest of the Altamira gang. The gang destroys the place with automatic rifles, forcing everyone to hide. While Ward strategizes, Poison tries to bargain with them, noting how everyone else wants to kill them, but he will let them go home if they surrender the wand. Out of options, Ward considers his offer, but Jacoby firmly refuses. As they argue, Tika gets hysterical, warning Jacoby that the devil is coming. Ward and Jacoby resolve to fight the gang head-on, but Layla and the other infernee, Teen and Seraphim, arrive and carve their way through the gangsters. During the massacre, Ward, Jacoby, and Tika rush outside and narrowly escape Layla's clutches when the L.A.P.D. blocks her path. The infernee also decimates the officers as the trio escape. Soon, they find refuge in a gasoline station, and while Ward cleans a gunshot wound, Jacoby expresses his worries about losing his position as a cop. He recounts that orcs chose the wrong side thousands of years ago and have been paying for it since. He then opens up about being seen by orcs as a wannabe human, while humans only see him as an animal. Ward counters that Jacoby should have told him about the orc kid he helped, but he points out that Ward doesn't trust him either. Jacoby admits that he wants to be like Ward, as his act of bravery earlier is exactly what orcs get blooded for. In turn, Ward admits that he used to be good like Jakoby, but now he's only pretending. When Rodriguez arrives, he initially tries to apprehend Ward for killing the officers, so they're forced to announce that they've been protecting the wand. Rodriguez sees it and immediately calls the Magic Task Force. Ward gets to talk to Candomir, negotiating to keep his records clean in exchange for the wand. Candomir assures him that since he acted to protect the wand from corrupt individuals, there would be no charges. As Montague and his team are tracking their location, the Inferni are doing the same. When Seraphin locates them first, Teen disconnects the call, so both parties rush to get to the wand. At the gas station, Rodriguez suggests handcuffing Jacoby since he'd likely get blamed for the dead cops. Ward is against it, but Jacoby relents, as they can't possibly run all night. However, as Rodriguez handcuffs them, he is shot and killed by the Inferni. The three rush inside, so Seraphin crashes the car into the store. He pins Jacoby against the chillers while Ward and Tika fight off Teen and Layla. To assist in the gunfight, Seraphin backs up the car and shoots an escaping Jacoby. The Inferni take turns inhaling fire until Ward finally shoots at butane canisters, causing an explosion that allows them to escape. During the escape, however, the three are cornered by Fogteeth gangsters, who take them to their leader, Dorgu. Dorgu scolds them for bringing guns and disorder to their party earlier. After insulting Jacoby for being unblooded, Dorgu pretends to accept him in exchange for the wand. When both cops refuse to talk, Dorgu gets them beaten up. Jacoby is asked again, but he refuses, so Dorgu stabs him while Ward gets strangled with a metal chain. When the gang finds their bag empty, Dorgu orders his son, Mikey, to shoot Jacoby. The boy hesitates, however, revealing that he's the teen Jacoby helped escape. Understanding that he can't kill the orc who saved him, Dorgu shoots Jacoby instead. Ward can only watch as Jacoby's body falls into a seemingly endless pit. Devastated with Jacoby's demise, Tika takes out the wand and chants an elvish spell, pulling Jacoby back and bringing him back to life. This miracle stuns the orcs, making them kneel before Jacoby as they regard him as a chosen one from a prophecy. While the orcs kneel, Ward carries Tika and urges Jacoby to escape. Once they're outside, Tika starts speaking English since she now trusts the two. Ward asks why she didn't use magic earlier to help them, so Tika explains she only started her training. Tika also reveals that the Inferni are working to bring the Dark Lord back and usher in a new age of magic to slaughter millions and enslave survivors. Tika was a former Inferni, but she escaped, and the Shield of Light hit her at their safe house at the Abrams Street. When Layla sent Larica with the wand to assassinate her, Tika stole the wand and fused Larica to the wall. Tika develops black veins and coughs up dark blood as a side effect of using magic, so Ward hotwires a car to take her to a hospital. However, Tika says she needs to go to the pools at the safe house, which are connected like the roots of a holy tree. Ward insists on taking Tika to the hospital and letting the feds handle the situation, but Jacoby convinces him to consider that they might be in a prophecy, like the one that ended the war with the Dark Lord years ago. After seeing magic and miracles firsthand, Ward relents. At the safe house, they load themselves with weapons, unaware that the Inferni are already there. While Layla chants a spell by the pool, Seraphin and Teen attack, overpowering the officers. Jacoby's brute force allows him to pin Seraphin to a wall with a metal rod. He then attaches a bomb to Teen and pushes her out the window, where she explodes. Having heard the explosion, Layla joins in the fight while Seraphin frees himself. Seraphin beats up Jacoby while Layla confronts Tika and Ward. When he gets thrown back, Jacoby spots a gun and blows Seraphin's brains off. Meanwhile, Ward holds Layla against a fridge, and Tika hits her with magic from the wand. Jacoby then finishes her off with 2 shots in the chest. Finally, they then descend to the pools and put Tika into its healing waters. Unbeknownst to them, Layla is revived by residual magic from the wand. Soon, Layla appears and hangs Jacoby with a cord. She then retrieves the wand and blasts Ward away before throwing Tika out of the water. Layla kneels before Tika, inviting her to come home, but Tika tells her to kill her instead. Refusing to do so, Layla aims the wand at Ward, accusing him of influencing her sister, Tika. Soon, Jacoby frees himself and shoots Layla's hand, making her drop the wand. Jacoby attempts to fire a fatal shot but runs out of ammo. As a last resort, Ward decides to touch the wand, willing to let everyone get pulverized to stop Layla. When he grabs the wand, however, he doesn't explode. Instead, the wand's blue light turns fiery orange, confirming that Ward is a bright Tika teaches him a spell, and when Ward uses it, Layla erupts in a massive explosion that deters Candemir and his men, who had just arrived outside the safe house. Ward drops the wand and rushes towards Tika, but she has disappeared. Jakoby forces him to let Tika go as they need to leave the burning building. Jakoby makes it outside, but when he doesn't find Ward behind him, he rushes back and saves him. Once outside, they spot the fog-teeth orcs in Dorgu, who cuts his palm and raises it, accepting Jakoby as a blooded orc. As the medics flock to the injured cops, the magic task force secures the wand. Sometime later, Ward wakes up in the hospital with Jakoby by his bedside. Candemir and Montague arrive, and before they can speak, Jakoby panics and babbles about the whole thing. Ward stops him and instead gives the agents a plausible report without mentioning the existence of a wand. He ends it with them being saved by the task force, so Ward thanks them. Candemir confirms that this will be their statement, and Jakoby agrees. Soon, the fallen police officers are given honors, and Ward hates that the crooked officers are being celebrated alongside Rodriguez, but Jakoby tells him that it's enough that they know the truth. Ward and Jakoby are also awarded medals for their service, and Ward briefly sees. Hope you enjoyed it. Consider subscribing, it is free. Cancel anytime.